Welcome to a dialogue on accountability in the digital age, a dialogue with representatives of a global, multi-stakeholder community.
And I'm your host, Frits Bussemaker, and today I'm delighted and privileged to have a conversation with Marielza Oliveira of UNESCO. Marielza, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Frits. It's a wonderful opportunity to be here.
Let me introduce you to our audience. You are the Director, Division for Digital Inclusion Policies and Information at UNESCO in Paris. Before that, you were of UNESCO in Beijing, and before UNESCO of UNDP. And also you are a subject matter expert when we talk about accountability in the digital age, because you've also been involved in, you were responsible for developing AI systems when you're in the States, and you have a PhD in business administration and a native from Brazil. I hope we just covered briefly where you come from, but this gives you, the audience, a brief overview of your background. The main topic for our discussion right now is information as a public good. Can you please explain the audience why we should have that, why that's the topic?
All right. Well, we really have an internet that has been evolving, transforming, or digital ecosystems that have been transforming for quite a while. And the ability of these systems to actually put information at the fingertips of everyone is incredible. It's empowering societies in ways that we really haven't seen before. But they also bring in quite a lot of issues with them, because these information ecosystems, they don't necessarily contain reliable information. There's quite a lot of it that we don't know the source for, and it's not necessarily accurate. And beyond inaccuracy, which is, could be misinformation and just mistakes, we actually have actively harmful content. Things like disinformation, hate speech, conspiracy theories, different types of contents that can damage human rights, human dignity. And the problem is that what we see in reality is that technology has evolved so much faster than regulation was able to evolve, that we really left quite a lot of these aspects of regulation of the digital content unregulated, or we are trying to catch up and regulating sometimes with a tremendously heavy hand that actually ends up harming freedom of expression and access to information with our human rights, according to Article 19 of the Declaration. Or in other times, in other examples, we actually have no regulation at all, which leaves people exposed to this kind of harmful content on a heavy basis. So this is where we are right now. And we see the need for having a conversation that really brings different types of groups together to discuss how can we agree on on an approach, on the principles that we need to have in order for digital ecosystems to really fulfill their task of providing information as a public good to everyone, because we need information. Information is incredibly important for decision making, but we need evidence-based, reliable information on which we make decisions, on which we base the social contract. If we cannot trust people, if you cannot trust what they tell you, if there is no trust, there is no social cohesion, there is no social contract. So harmful information ecosystems, they damage the social contract. They damage people in different ways. And that's the point. And that's why UNESCO is actually convening a conference on the 21st to 23rd of February this year. So, over about a month from now, a bit over a month from now, so that we bring together a multi-stakeholder group to Paris to sit down and look at what types of principles should we embed into a model regulatory framework that then can be, disseminated, and different governments, different partners can look at it and say, what parts of it can I bring into my regulatory environment? And we don't think of regulation just in terms of government regulation, but in terms of service for companies, for example, for big tech companies, for internet platforms, different types of experiments, such as regulatory sandboxes that brings together government, regulatory bodies, and big tech to come together and experiment different types of things like that. But the idea is to have a conversation about the kinds of processes that need to be in place in order for a regulatory environment to be promoting human rights, human dignity, particularly freedom of expression, as well as protecting the information environment against harmful content. So that's the idea.
Well,
So I'm so excited
yeah,
about it.
yeah, okay. It's quite amazing that you've actually described the core reason why the Institute for Accountability was formed in 2017. And actually, for the audience sake, your predecessor instigated the Institute for Accountability, the late Enrique Banayi, because he realized that the members of UNESCO were complaining about the fact that digital technology is moving so fast and the regulatory framework can't keep up with. And that gap creates an accountability issue, and that leads to lack of trust because the way technology can be abused. So I fully understand where you're coming from. Now, do you see the discussion going in the right direction? Are we catching up? Are we closing the gap? Or are you or is there concern that it's increasing?
Well, I think that there are so many different types of approaches.
Yeah.
And I see the trend going actually both ways. There are good examples, good, solid examples, in which regulatory frameworks are actually setting up the standards by which you protect human rights. We are located here in Europe, so we see quite a lot of the efforts by the European Commission in terms of this kind of regulation, and they always preface it by saying exactly that. That the point is to protect human rights. And the kinds of content the regulatory frameworks have is really focused on those. But you also see a lot of autocratic regimes out there who use the opportunity, quote, opportunity of hate speech and conspiracy theories online, but actually suppress the access to information and prevent freedom of expression. So by creating the circumstances by which activists and whistleblowers and others that are concerned with worsening conditions for freedom in particular environments to actually say something about it or disseminate information. And you see a lot of that going on as well. So we actually see more internet shutdowns now than we actually see before.
Okay.
So this extremes.
Yeah. Now, one of the key things when we want to have an internet of trust is full transparency. So let me ask you a question because of sake of transparency. The way decisions are currently being taken within a UN agency means the veto rights means also the UN instrument can be abused. So does this discussion also lead to rethink how can we also take our own organization into the 21st level when it comes to decision making? So is digital technology changing the way you're organized?
Well, it changes the way, of course, that the UN approaches the conversation, because it brings new partners to the table, such as big tech, for example, sometimes more powerful than large governments, and less accountable because they are operating in a in a place that lacks a jurisdiction called cyberspace.
Yeah.
Although, of course, their service is located in a particular place, their headquarters in a certain place, and so on and so forth, but they're spread around the world in many ways. So, yeah, I mean, we need to have that conversation with new partners, new stakeholders, and we have different types of issues to address that many times we actually don't have the people who will have the conversation capable of having that conversation. One of the things that we've been doing at UNESCO, for example, was we started training judges on AI and the rule of law, to really tell them, what does artificial intelligence have to do with rule of law? What are some of the principles that exist? Because judges, they don't necessarily know anything about technology. They don't know what are the opportunities and the risks that these technologies generate. And the same thing for, crypto, for different for AR, VR, or augmented reality, virtual reality, and that kind of thing. So we really need to bring that information to them for them to understand. So building capacities of civil servants, particularly those that are tasked with this decision-making process on how to engage with platforms, is something that became a major process and a major line of work for us, because we are constantly asked about that. But that's true also for the UN system and for the international community, as a whole. We also do that for our own colleagues in the UN system that are not necessarily so conversant with the links that exist between technologies and freedom of expression, or access to information rights or privacy rights, and what are the implications that new technologies will have to the protection and promotion of these rights. So of course, we are the ones that other UN entities advocate for that, as well. But we go very deeply into transparency requirements and how content moderation happens. How do we manage content on the internet? What are some of the issues that we need to do? What are some of the capacities that we need to build? Media and information literacy, for example, for users to be able to distinguish between harmful content and content that is just not necessarily harmful, but it's not necessarily relevant. It could be entertainment, but it's not information, but it's entertainment, and it's fine as long as it's not really harming somebody. So, but there's this fine line distinctions between what is parody, what is joke, what is actually, name calling, and you need to really contextualize those things and make sure that you have mechanisms to identify where they are creating negative impact into social contract. So that's where we specialize.
Yeah, and also what you're stating about the context and contextualize also has the complexity that what's going to be offensive for one person is not going to be offensive for the other person. So
absolutely,
take into account the cultural aspect and the regional aspect, which even makes it more complex and difficult to set guidelines. So can you set global guidelines, realizing or you just acknowledging that we have all these differences around the world?
Absolutely. We have created guidelines. There are global guidelines for different aspects of digital ecosystems management, development, and management. For example, one of the elements that UNESCO is famous for is the recommendation on the ethics of artificial intelligence. The point is not that we create, for example, a list of unethical things to do, but that we agree on principles that need to be respected wherever this kind of technology is being applied. And that's where I think it makes sense for us to establish the principles, transparency and accountability being absolutely fundamental to the preservation and protection and promotion of rights on the internet.
Great. By the way, thank you for acknowledging accountability is key in this case, next to transparency. Now, you just mentioned you need a global multi-stakeholder discussion. In your view, who should be at the table And are there also people organizations, entities being excluded?
Well, UNESCO doesn't exclude anybody.
Okay.
You
Yeah.
know, we welcome all participants, all voices, and we are bringing together a large group of stakeholders. We have, of course, our UNESCO member states, the official representation of them, some at ministerial level, some at ambassadorial level, but they are coming. Then we have the big tech companies. Of course, we need them, but also we need an independent technological community, because the big tech are businesses, not necessarily just looking at the best interests of others. They're looking at what's already there, and so we're bringing also technologists that are famous and very conversant with this kind of things. Civil society, a spectrum of organizations that deal with a range of issues, from human rights agencies to gender equality agencies to indigenous rights ones, because they are not necessarily taking into account as much on the internet, as well as organizations that deal specifically with digital environments, those that are looking at rights on wherever it happens, and so on and so forth. So private sector, civil society, the regulatory agencies, and they're all coming, so we are very pleased to see that.
Okay. And how do you ensure that in a lot of cases, the in-crowd will be aware and will be willing to make time and come over. So, and that in itself is very much a diverse crowd. I'm aware of that. But sometimes you also realize there are organizations out there which are not yet aware they could be part of the discussion. So how proactive are you in inviting people to attend that discussion?
Well, we've extended, invitations to, to a few of our partners, well, to quite a few of our partners that usually come to different types of events, particularly around World Press Freedom Day, around, some of the regulatory institutions that we work with on access to information, and, judges. We extended invitations, and of course, to all the UN entities that are our partners and colleagues in this endeavor of looking at digital ecosystems. There are quite a few of them, but they started multiplying and sending to their colleagues, and then of course the invitation is public as well, and so we use different types of networks.
Okay, you just triggered me another question I had, which, okay, we're educating people, you're educating judges. Now I can imagine lots of various groups, civil servants. You can, but this requires sufficient resources. And I was just wondering, what's your take? Do we have enough resources in digital technology, in understanding what it does, the policy perspective, that we can actually start to educate all those various groups of people out there?
Well, I'll have to answer in two different ways. First, compared to the amount of investment that happens in digital ecosystems, it's a drop in the ocean. The kind of investment that you need for that. Second, UNESCO itself is very limited in terms of resource base. We are not the richest UN entity by far. We are actually one of the middle ones, more to the end. But the thing that UNESCO is rich in is in points on the network, in connections, and we have many ways in which we can economize. For example, this training that I mentioned to you on AI and the rule of law for judges, it literally trained 4,500 judges from 140 countries last year, and we spent, I think it was about $400,000, to create the MOOC that then can be implemented many times.
Okay.
Not only one time, but so you can imagine the return to investment on a deal like that, particularly because those are judges in high courts, in countries that are actually going to make decisions about, how to, adjudicate cases of artificial intelligence in their own national environments. So you can't get cheaper to get this kind of ability and capacity around the world than what we've done.
Okay, good answer. So it's making certain that the people, the decision makers, start to understand what this means, what the implications are, and then they can take it on a local level.
Absolutely. And not only that, but we train trainers as well that they replicate this kind of effort, and then they become a network themselves that help each other with their decision making.
Okay. Hey, I'm conscious of the time because my time is moving very fast, just like digital technology at the moment, unfortunately. A couple of questions at the end. What's, in your mind, the biggest threat for accountability in the digital age? Where would you put your effort?
Well, I don't think that we can pinpoint a particular one. But one of the new technologies that we see coming out right now is large language models. And you see a lot of different types of systems out there that actually harvest information and spill out information that nobody's really accountable for in a way, and that kind of content that they spill out is blatantly wrong, is misinformation at a mass scale sometimes. So you see some things like that. On the technology side, that's one of the examples. On the regulation side, I think the biggest threat is exactly this lack of capacity that I was talking about by the people who actually need to lead and are entrusted to lead digital transformation processes in their own jurisdictions, but really come to us and say, I am not prepared. So help us. I am not prepared. And so the threat is not that they are not prepared. The threat is that we don't really have the resource necessarily being invested around the world at the level that it should be invested in order for it to happen. And of course, the issues of the fact that we really don't have agreed principles yet. So hopefully by February, we will come up with some global, agreement on how to take this forward.
So February is a key moment, a key milestone, because then we'll have the conference in Paris, the Internet of Trust, the global conference, 21st, 23rd of February. So anybody watching, you can still sign up if you want. Brings me to two last questions, if I may.
Sure.
Now, the UN has called the period we're now in the decade of execution when it comes to the SDGs. And if you look at one of the key pillars to execute on this decade of execution is digital technology. SDGs, they run until 2030. What's your prediction, personal idea? Is going to be digital just as important in the successors of the SDGs? Are people already working on that? Or should we knock on a couple of doors in whatever, in New York, whatever, say, look, make certain that also in the future, in the successor of the SDGs, digital is going to be key?
I think already you see digital becoming absolutely central. And you see the member states themselves asking for that. So I cannot say what the member states will place as the top priority in 2030, and include in the next generation of development objectives. But already you see a roadmap shaping up for digital cooperation. That is, Secretary General Guterres is driving, but also, it's with the member states. First, we have a very very important points, milestones ahead of us coming up. So in 2024, for example, we have the Global Digital Compact. That the set of principles and commitments that are part of what the Secretary General and member states are calling our common agenda. And the Global Digital Compact is this agreement of how should we treat the internet, and specifically so that it really is a public good, a global public good that helps us to solve global challenges rather than create new ones. So that's 2024. 2025, we actually have the 25-year review of the World Summit for the Information Society, the WSIS process, which is also a huge milestone. And what comes out of that will certainly inform the discussions that will then start at that point, that will culminate and the 2020 and 31st maybe as the the new set of development objectives. And I really, my bet, if I have to have a bet, is that we're gonna have an actual digital objectives, specifically digital at the time, because it's absolutely critical. And we need to really take that the way that we shape digital ecosystems forward as a development issue everywhere.
Might be we're a little bit biased, but I really hope you're right, and that is what we're going to see happening in the near future. Last question for you, Marielza. How can a community like the Institute for Accountability help in this discussion?
Well, the Institute for Accountability is literally at the center of this discussion, because that's exactly what we're looking for. What is going on right now is the spread of this kind of harm without anybody being accountable for the harm that it causes. So you are absolutely at the center of this discussion. So please, not only come, but come. Provide your inputs to the model framework that we are going to be developing, and come to have, to bring your voice to this conversation, because this is the voice, this is a central voice that we hope to have, calling everybody's attention to the importance of us curbing this kind of harm. So
Marielza, I want to thank you so much for your interview, your passionate call for action to have that global and multi-stakeholder discussion. And I can promise you, we will meet in Paris, and we will be an active part of that discussion, and make sure that we get there. Thank you.
Brazilian coffee on me when you come. So thank you so much. Oh, obrigada. No, thank you so much for this interview. It was delightful to see you again. Thank you.